Day. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask for Joy to do a roll call, and then if anybody in the audience would like to provide an invocation, we'll go ahead and do that. I had talked to Supervisor Pereira, but I'm not sure where he's at.
He's just here?
To do it. Yeah, he's here.
Joy will really draw out roll call.
No, please don't. Supervisor Silvera already told me he's got to be someplace at a certain time, so if you hear a buzzer going off, I'm going to time it. So that's what it is. So go ahead, please.
Director Aguilar? Director Kale?
Here.
Director Espinosa?
Present.
Director Faria? Director Hogue?
Here.
Director McDaniel?
Present.
Director Nagy?
Here.
Director Pereira? Director Pedroso?
Here.
Director Silvera?
Thank you for saving the best for last. Here.
And thank you, and we do have a quorum.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like, or anybody on the dais that would like to provide an invocation? Okay. Then I am going to ask Director Nagy to lead us in the pledge.
Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Let's see. Moving along, we have the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any requests to modify the agenda? Or is anybody willing to make a motion for approval?
Chair Silvera, motion to approve the agenda is submitted.
Daniel, second.
Okay. Do we need to vote? Okay.
Well, we don't need a roll call, but we can do all in favor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes. Public comment. The public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. When recognized to speak, please state your name and city or community of residence. For the record, for items not on the agenda, no action will be taken. If it requires action, the item will be referred to staff and or placed on the next agenda. If you're participating by Zoom, please, and wish to comment, please use the raise your hand feature. And if you are participating by phone only, please press *9 to alert the moderator. And I think that's Mary Michael, correct? Are you doing the Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
We have no hands raised.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and go on to our Caltrans report.
Mr. Chair, we do have Marlon coming online.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Marlon.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Madam Director and board members. Just want to give a brief update from Caltrans. Hopefully you can hear me. I'll start with our Clean California program. Just briefly, just wanted to mention we have updated our District 10 Clean California webpage. It does have a whole new look, and it displays some of the projects that we've done over the past year and some upcoming events that we have moving forward. So I encourage everyone to take a look at our new Clean California webpage for District 10. Also want to just highlight our District 10 Ambassador Program. We are trying to improve our collaboration and cooperation, or communication with our partner agencies, and so we've identified ambassadors for each of the cities and the county of Merced. So I just wanted to mention for the board's knowledge that Grace Mexayo, our Deputy District Director for Program Project Management, is the ambassador for Merced County. Myself, I am the ambassador for City of Atwater, Dos Palos, and Livingston, and Grace is also the ambassador for Gustine as well as the city of Merced. So just wanted to share that with the board. That will actually be in our upcoming letter to the board as well. And we do have an update to our Caltrans Quick Map app on iPhone and Android. So we are unveiling a new push notification feature. So if you're in the area driving and there's construction around, the app will automatically notify you of any detours or construction updates available, and any emergencies as well. So please do check that out. It's on our Caltrans Quick Map app. Last thing I want to mention for the board today is that our maintenance director, deputy district director, Mauricio Serrano, will be departing to go to District 3, and we're going to have a temporary maintenance deputy director. So we'll be naming that soon, and we'll provide that contact information to the board. That concludes my comments for today. Actually, I do want to provide some updates before I finish on some of the actions. I know that there was a request on 33 in Dos Palos regarding some pavement settling, and we are in the process of looking at both of those locations requested. One of them, there was identified settling, but the other one, I think our maintenance team is going out there to take a look. So we'll have those updates in our board letter as well. That does conclude my comments. I'm happy to take any questions, and thanks again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Marlon, since you guys have divided this up, is it okay if I just call you no matter where I am in Merced County?
No problem, Supervisor. Yep.
You got it. Okay, just making sure.
Director Espinoza.
Marlon, good afternoon. Thank you for coming today. And, I think we're going to put comments, so Director Espinoza's comments every meeting. So I always have something on there. But thank you. I wanted to ask, I know that South Highway 59, you guys have done a good job of maintaining the road, but when it gets to the city limits, the road's pretty bad, especially in front of the what's it called? The fairgrounds. I was trying to think there. The fairgrounds, is that maintained by you guys, right? Not by the city?
Director, I'm not sure. I will definitely follow up to see if that's within our right of way or the city, and make sure that we maintain that area and work with the city as well.
Yeah, because like I said, you guys are pretty good about maintaining the roads, but not that part. So I think it's probably it's part of your area. So if you can look at it, please. Thank you. Appreciate it. That was all.
Okay. Anybody else? Marlon, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Okay. Next, we have our Citizens Advisory Committee report with Mr. Jose Delgadillo.
Hello to all of you, and you too.
Always with a smile.
I am here to present to you in few words, a briefing report from our MCAG CAC meeting, August 5th, 2022. Right after Chair Shane Smith called the meeting to order, Stacy's staff was ready for action. And they are ready now to answer some of your questions later on during this meeting. Okay. The Merced County Association of Governments and Transit Joint Powers Authority of Merced County presented to our Citizens Advisory Committee action, information, and discussion items. 2 action items. First, the CAC recommended your adoption of the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy, Environmental Impact Report, Federal Transportation Improvement Program, and Air Quality Conformity Analysis. Second, The CAC recommended that you approve project submittal for the State of Good Repair program for fiscal year 2022-2023. One discussion item, CAC discussed bus stops locations that included West Yosemite Avenue and El Redondo Drive. Actually, what I had in mind was to improve the present bus stop on El Redondo Drive and Aurora Drive by adding a shelter. Winter weather can be tough on the passengers. It is very near to Marino Park. This bus stop heavily used by various type of passengers. Wintertime is tough for many of the students. Last September, you appointed one of our CIC members, Paul Ward, was appointed a year ago to join the Citizen Advisory Committee on the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Citizens Advisory Committee. I was appointed as his alternate. Paul, at our last MCAG-CAC meeting, reported a 93% major reduction in air pollution from the year 1980 until 2021. In 1980, there were approximately 820 tons of NOx emissions per day, but by the end of 2021, there was only approximately 190 tons per day. This is very difficult to understand since there are so many ways of polluting the air. However, Supervisor Lloyd Pereira can easily get the information as needed. That's why he's not here to answer that question.
I was just hiding from you.
Okay. He is a governing board member of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. The SJVA-PCD has canceled some meetings due to the lack of quorum. I want you to be assured that Mr. Paul Ward and I have been present and available for meetings since we were appointed. Stacy, your troops are ready for action. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to consent. Does anyone have any questions or want one of the consent items pulled from the agenda? Oh, I'm sorry. Information is first. These items are included for informational purposes. No presentation will be made by staff unless anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions on any of the informational items? Okay, seeing none, we will go back to consent. Does anybody wish to pull anything off of the consent calendar?
I'll move for approval. Second.
Okay, so I think that was that you, Rodrigo?
Yeah.
Okay, so Darren made the motion and Rodrigo seconded it. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes. All right. There's nothing on number 8, so nothing on number 9. Okay, MCAG action items, these are to be taken one at a time, and public comment will need to be available during each item. So we'll go ahead and start with 10A. Adopting the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Communities Strategy, Environmental Impact Report, Federal Transportation Improvement Program, and Air Quality Conformity Analysis. Elizabeth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. Thank you for reading that very long title of that staff report for me. It helped a lot. So you all have been hearing a lot about the RTP in the last 6 to 8 months. Last month we had a public hearing on those documents. What you have before you today is firstly to certify the program level environmental impact report for the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. What you'll see in your packet, if it's a very long item, but that includes the findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations presented to this board to certify, and the mitigation monitoring program that will be needed for the regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. In addition to those items, you have our federal transportation improvement program and the air quality conformity analysis that accompanies all of those documents. As of the closing of the public comments on August 4th, there were comments received from a number of agencies, particularly Caltrans, the San Joaquin Rail Commission, the Air District, the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Department of Toxic Substances Control. All of those have been posted online and in your documents as far as the comments received and how we've addressed them. So I'm happy to take any questions further on the item. I believe our environmental consultant is on the phone also, or on Zoom also, if you have any specific questions on the environmental impact report.
Does anybody have any questions?
I got one comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did reach out to Stacy. I believe it was yesterday. Just one of the questions that I had, and I think it's worth repeating, is, you know, as this board took the action to go with what we call as the most aggressive strategy on the SCS, just wanting to make sure that we're not penalizing ourselves moving forward because we went kind of above and beyond what maybe some of the minimum expectations are, and trying to reduce those numbers even further. And it's in past practice in other types of things where you deal with the state, then moving forward, fast forward 5-10 years, and they set a new standard. And because we did better, we're expect, you know, just to illustrate it, if they said that you needed to do a 10% reduction by 2023, and we did a 15% reduction, well, then come by the next round, they're going to say, oh, now you need to do another 10%. And we don't get to start at that 10% that we now have already reduced by 15%. And then we'd have to add an additional 10% on that. And after explanation from Stacy, these are kind of more of just guidance numbers. It's really, I don't know, for lack of better words, no really real way to kind of quantify. It's just kind of a guiding document as it helps you plan moving forward. So I feel comfortable with sticking to that more aggressive strategy, knowing that we're not going to be penalized down the road. Thank you.
Yes.
But I just want to add a little bit of clarification. I appreciate the director's question, and just want to state that when we get the approval or the adoption or acceptance of the SES from the California Air Resources Board, it is a nod, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they believe that the strategies we have in place, if implemented, would reach the target that was established for us. So if the target is 10%, and even though we say 15 and we're going through negotiations with them before acceptance, it's not an agreement that they say, oh, we say, yes, you're going to achieve 15. It's that they'll say, we are sufficiently convinced that you would meet your established target, which was the 10, with the strategies you have in place. So it's really, I mean, and I looked to Elizabeth, that was what I had tried to do in our last RTP or our last SCS. I said, where is our starting point? Because in our last submission, we achieved more than what our target was. And the answer was, our acceptance is that we're saying you have met your threshold, not agreeing that you have met what you submitted to be your achievement level. I don't know and I'm looking to Elizabeth to see if your experience at TCAG was different than that, but that was the language and the guidance we've had in the past. So in this instance, when this document gets approved or accepted by CARB, it would be an understanding that they're saying that if implemented, we would have met the target that they have set for us.
Yes, I concur. And also I was going to mention that we're also looking at, you know, a baseline year of 2005 and looking at what 2035 looks like. So we're still going back to like the same base year and reevaluating 2035 like every few years. So it shouldn't necessarily escalate. We're still going back to a base year and have like the same kind of number that we're trying to work, that we're starting to work from.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Anybody from the public? Okay, we will go ahead and entertain a motion First, we have to certify the 2022 Regional Transportation Plan and then adopt the 2022 Regional Transportation Plan, but we can do them together. Do I have a motion?
Chair Silvera, motion to approve both items.
Motion by Silvera, second by Pereira. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right. Next one. Okay, this is B, approve local transportation fund apportionment for fiscal year 2022-23 and adopt associated resolution. Nav.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, directors. This item seeks board authorization to approve $8.4 million in local transportation funds, as we know it, LTF. The proposed apportionment schedule includes $97,000 for administration, $56,000 for planning, $7.4 million for transit, with $7.1 million for Transit Joint Powers Authority, and $300,000 for YARTS, $420,000 for rail reserve, and $168,000 for bike and ped, which leaves $248,000 available for other eligible purposes. The staff proposed two options for the remaining $248,000. Option one is allocate the remaining $248,000 to jurisdiction by populations. The breakdown is on page 522. And the second one is creating a reserve fund, which these funds could be used but not limited to local match funds for grants, gap funding for local projects, additional allocation to rail fund, and flexible funds for MCAG or TJPA for other usage. Staff discussed these and other options with the technical review board, who were supportive of creating a general reserve, but recommendation is option A this year to avoid any budgetary impact to jurisdictions who may have anticipated receiving LTF for fiscal year 22-23. What I will say is, with the reserve, we will be bringing back something later in this fiscal year to determine how those funds could be accessible and how they will be used. Same thing with the rail reserve and the bike ped reserve. So that concludes the presentation. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? Anybody from the public have any questions? What is the pleasure of the board? Don't all jump at once.
Sure, I'll move to approve.
Okay. So that's the one that's A?
Hey,
Yeah, okay. So we have a motion by McDaniel, second by Kale. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're on C, adoption of the final Merced County Short Range Transit Plan. Mauricio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, board members. The action requested is to adopt the 2020 Merced County Short Range Transit Plan. On June 16th of this year, our transit manager provided a presentation on some of the recommendations in the Short Range Transit Plan, which opened up a 60-day comment period. That period has ended as of August 15th. To date, we've only received 3 comments. Those comments were addressed already in the changes that were made August 13th. There was one that was discussed, flag stops going away. It's something that's being addressed that will, regarding ADA bus stops in the incorporated cities. So that is already addressed in the short range transit plan. No significant content was changed because of these comments. So I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the short range transit plan.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just one comment. I just want to thank staff. I want to thank, for coming out to, I know that we saw them at our board meeting. I know that they made it out to all the council meetings, and really, if anybody said that we didn't do public engagement to introduce these new, trying to make the system more efficient, and I get it that not every decision that was made, you know, if you ride one of those routes and now it's going to change from a 2-hour route to a 1-hour route or whatever it is, it's not always convenient for everybody, but overall it makes the system more efficient. I think that we all can agree up here that the one thing that kills us is when we see these big buses driving up and down the road and nobody's on them. So we got to find ways to be more efficient at them, and I think that staff did a really great job of doing the Christine and you folks getting out to the jurisdictions wherever you could and putting that information out there and giving the public the opportunity to be able to talk about them and voice their concerns and maybe add some comments or maybe something that we weren't thinking of. So good work for you guys, for doing that public outreach. Thank you. And Chair, if there are no other comments, I'd make a motion to approve the item.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion by Director Silvera, second by Director Nagy. Does anybody in the public have any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next one, authorize the executive director to enter into a contract for a consultant to conduct REAP 2.0 program development and public outreach. Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I present the item, I do want to acknowledge Meg Prince in the audience, and I know she just said, do you want me to come up? And I gave her the sign to not come up, but now I changed my mind. Go ahead and come up, because I realized that this is, yeah, I know. It's like her second day, and I'm like, no, stop, go. No, it's not her second day, but she is new. So I do want to give Meg a moment to introduce herself for this item, if you don't mind. I can give the summary because she is new, but I want to start linking Meg to all of our REAP and housing items because moving forward, she will be our lead. So I was very, very happy and pleased to ask to poach Meg from, and sorry to my colleagues at Fresno COG, but Meg has been on with us now for since Monday. So would you mind just giving a quick, and sorry, if I could, Mr. Chair? Okay, thank you, Meg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, directors. As I'm Meg Prince, Senior Planner with MCAG. It's my first week, as Stacy mentioned. I came from Fresno Council of Governments, where I was mostly involved with the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy development and implementation. And then over the last several years, increasingly so in housing programs, specifically the Regional Early Action Planning or REAP programs. So I'm looking forward to working on those programs in Merced County and very much looking forward to working with you and your staff.
Thank you, Meg. So Elizabeth and I joked that I added her to the agenda for this item before she was even technically an employee because the agenda went out first. So I didn't want to scare her, but I did want to make sure to introduce her to you all as part of the REAP program. So for this item, this is seeking board authorization to enter into a contract with Southwest Strategies to conduct our REAP 2.0 program development and public outreach. If you'll recall, in July, I asked the board's authorization to submit an application to HCD for $100,000 of advance funding from the $3.9 million that we've been allocated or will be allocated for the REAP 2 program. This is the contract that we have, is the product of the RFP that we released to do the work to develop the program and the application that is required by December 31st of this year in order to access the $3.9 million. And you might wonder, why do we need that kind of money for that kind of outreach? It's because it is a very significant amount of kind of simultaneous outreach in the communities to help develop how we're going to use that money. And then it's an actual complex application process that needs to go in to submit that application to HCD again by the end of the calendar year. So Southwest Strategies was selected through the RFP process. Their bid was at $98,365. This process, including the RFP and the draft contract, was all developed in coordination with your housing staff or executive staff that have been part of this process, and was shared with the TRB and with the REAP work group throughout the process. So we are seeking board authorization to execute the contract. Time is of the essence with this work. And I thank you in advance and happy to answer any questions. I hate this. I hate this thing.
Are there any questions? Anybody from the public wish to ask any questions or comment on this item? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Pereira, second by Director Hoag. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed, say no. All right. Motion passes. The next item is the proposed agenda item for consideration, roles of the Technical Review Board and Citizens Advisory Committee. I know this was something that was brought up by Director Silvera, and I think Stacy will provide a quick update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to set the stage for this discussion as a reminder of what our agenda item of policy is. Director Silvera last month asked to have an item added to the agenda for discussion. And so today's item is, as I will turn over to Director Silvera to talk about what he is proposing to have on a future agenda. And the way it would work would be any concept or project or idea that he would like to have added to a future agenda would then entail the ability to direct staff to do any kind of research or any kind of work that would be needed to have that item come back up on the agenda, and it would require an affirmative vote of 6 to meet that threshold. All yours.
Thank you. And so where I just, so everybody understands where this item comes from is I'm unclear kind of what is the role of the Technical Review Board? What exactly is the role of the Citizens Advisory Committee? Understanding how are they formed? Those things were done before I got here, and I'm just quite not sure on all those things. Like, how are they formed? What are their roles? Understanding that we're the governing body. The Technical Review Board is just that, in my opinion, is the Technical Review Board. They review the stuff that comes before this board. Some of my challenges are, and why I'm asking for this is there's situations where we're creating 2 agendas, and one I'm going to call is the draft agenda for the governing board that the TRB sees, and really they're getting the information before us, and in some cases the information changes by the time it gets to us. And so if you're looking at, you have a deadline to meet to get something in front of this board and like a contract date or when something has to be done, well, if that goes to the Technical Review Board, excuse me, before the date that the agenda needs to come out to us, then you have possibilities of things to change. And where I guess some of my heartburn with it is everybody shares their information differently, but I would get phone calls from members of this board that reside within my district, and they're not happy about something and quite boisterous with me on expressing some frustration, and I'm sitting there saying I have no idea what you're talking about because my agenda hasn't come out yet. I haven't seen it yet, but yet you've already been notified of it. And so then it puts me in a position of I'm sitting there trying to have a discussion about something that I'm not quite sure about. I don't like being put in that position. And then I would like to ask also is that if a majority of my colleagues will go along with me on this, is as somebody who sits on the Board of Supervisors, who also sits on numerous committees and boards as part of this role, I always want to feel that I add value to the committee or board that I sit on, and that my input is being valued. And I would like to, it doesn't need to be at a public meeting, but if you got all kinds of like monkey survey or whatever that's called, where you could survey monkey, where you could survey folks. Yeah. Anyhow, but that you reach out to our Citizens Advisory Committee, you reach out to the folks on our TRB and ask those questions. Are you getting value out of what you do? And are you providing value? So it's not I don't want anybody to think that this is a reason to get rid of. I just want to understand their roles. Why were they put in place? I've heard some stuff over the years, you know, that this was really kind of started as you know, kind of like your public works folks were just really doing technical review on some of the work that goes on here that's going to affect our jurisdictions. And I think over the years, things have been added to their role without this board really approving what's been added to their role. And ultimately, they're advising us. And I would like to think as a policymaker that we all are up here, that we would have some kind of say and a more, in my opinion, a more structured, okay, these are your roles, this is what you are doing and what you're not doing. Really, they're not making the decisions. To me, the technical review board especially is supposed to be advising to bring better, more well-refined policies, procedure to us, to ultimately as the decision makers, the policy makers, to make those decisions. I get a little bit kind of indifferent, if you will, if they're changing stuff that really should be within this board's jurisdiction to change. So, like I said, I would hope that a majority of my colleagues would go along with me to really, I think it would be beneficial to all of us to understand better what it is that we're asking them to do and have that memorialized in some way, shape, or form, where it's not just a bunch of piecemeal, oh, well, something was added here and something was added there, and now we kind of have this hodgepodge of rules and regulations that they kind of somewhat live by, but with no real definition of it. So I hope I did a good enough job of explaining that, and I would encourage, I would make the motion to direct staff to encompass all of those things that I just spoke about and without repeating them again, and then come back to this board at a later time so that we can have a more in-depth discussion and really kind of get into the weeds a little bit more. And then I would also, just as a caveat to that, put on there, if it's something that we don't necessarily think a board meeting would be the place for it, maybe consider like some type of workshop setting that would be just for that and not doing all the other business that we need to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other comments?
That's the motion. I'll second the motion.
Okay, I just want to make some of my comments. I'm in total agreement with this. I think it's important for us to really see what's going, like to understand it as we move forward. And I think you said that very well. And I think that you were able to kind of give the staff direction to put this on. The only thing, and I know that you asked for this at the last meeting, but I know that I think a majority of us are going to be gone for the next meeting. So could we do this in October or do the workshop like you had said?
So just to clarify, I didn't put a specific date that it needs to come back by. I'm fully expect that staff's going to spend some time to kind of research and define this. I'll put on my motion is that to a later date to be determined. I mean, I will obviously, if it's a year from now and we haven't seen it, probably remind somebody, but I'll leave that to staff to kind of, is this going to take you a couple months to get to it, to be able to bring it back? I'm not expecting it to be at the next meeting.
Can we just get so I guess this is more of a question for you. Would it be possible for you to give us like a time, like what you think, like if it's 90 days, if it's 6 months, if it's, I mean, you don't have to do it now. If you just can get back to us and just let us know. It's just, I know that you guys are busy. I know that there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. And I'm not saying that it will, but it's just one of those things that sometimes these things do. And so that's why I asked. So that's my point. Yep. Okay, so we have a motion by Silvera and a second by McDaniel, right? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we have no discussion items. We'll move on to the Regional Waste Management Authority. Number 12.
Marty.
Is this Marty?
Yeah,
okay.
Not John.
Authorizing the executive director to enter into a 6-year contract for the installation of GPS equipment and support services in the amount of $231,000.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We are asking the board to authorize the executive director to enter into a contract with RDO Integrated Controls in the amount of $231,000 $221.99 for a GPS system. This is for equipment. The equipment's going to be one base station, 2 dozer screens, and 1 on the compactor. It also includes the training and the support services for 6 years. What this equipment does is give the operator some real-time information on his compaction using in-cab color codes. If it's red, it's going to need some more compaction. If it's green, it's got plenty of compaction. Move on to another area. This will also give the information to the supervisor on how other operators are doing and compare the 2 operators maybe together and see which one may need more training and which one doesn't. Also, management can do some real-time reports on cell life and waste density. You can look at the previous week and see what kind of density we got over that past week and what maybe they did yesterday and get real waste densities on that. Currently, staff calculates this information quarterly at each landfill, and it's really endless man hours. All in all, this technology is the industry standard and will extend the life of the landfills. If anybody has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Director Purr.
First, I just want to say thank you for, I knew you couldn't stay out of California very long. No, but I seriously appreciate you stepping in and keeping things whole for us as we transition.
All right. Thank you.
And no questions.
Anybody else? Anybody from the public wish to ask a question or comment? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Chair Silvera, motion to approve.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Silvera, second by Pereira. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, number 13. This is the organic waste processing or transfer request for proposal. One of my colleagues' favorite.
Everyone's favorite. My favorite. Good afternoon. Thank you. Kyle Loretto, Diversion Program Manager for RWA. This is just an update on where we are in the process. I told you last month that we were looking to go out to negotiations, and the evaluation team did recommend that we do that. So notices of negotiations were sent out to 2 agencies. One was Atlas Organics of South Carolina. The other one was a team of Agrarmen with Energia and Bowles Family Farm Company. Those 2 companies we'll be negotiating with in parallel. We'll come up with the best possible complete plan and contract we can with those 2 companies. We'll take those back to the evaluation team, and they will then recommend which one to bring back to you folks. In your packet, you should have a timeline telling you how that will be going on. So in October, the committees will be getting those evaluation. The evaluation team will be looking at that and making those recommendations. We will be taking those to the TRB to review those contracts, and then from there we will then be taking those out to your boards. So we'll bring to the county supervisors board each of the city councils that would like to see those contracts. Specifically, we'll be taking those to the jurisdictions who have told us that they will be participating in the services that this facility will take on. But if any of your other boards were interested in seeing those, we'd be happy to bring those to you. From then, we will bring the contracts back to the TRB and to the governing board in about February of 2023. At that point, we will ask you to approve a contract and get construction started on whichever process we're going to go with. That is it. If anybody has any questions for me.
Are you ready to get some arrows? Does anybody up here have any questions or comments? Darren?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday at Rural County Representatives of California, we had a meeting, and regarding SB 1383, I guess the Little Hoover report, the Little Hoover group is submitting a report, and they're doing a review, and it looks like they might be doing thresholds of population
I have not seen or heard of this yet.
Okay, so that is, I hear that is in the discussions, and a lot of times this report does direct state in making their, because what they're seeing is, in their findings, is we're going to create more pollution trying to solve this issue in counties, and I heard a 300,000 threshold could be 300 to 200,000, because they're feeling like we're going to create more waste or more pollution, literally, by trying to solve that problem within the smaller counties.
Well, I will definitely be looking into anyone who has any information on this. Actually, in a few weeks, the first week of September, I'll be heading to a conference on diversion in the state, which CalRecycle is presenting at. So if anyone is aware of what's going on, the folks at this presentation, this conference will be in.
It sounds like CalRecycle is very intently listening to this particular.
I'm sure they are, but many communities and others involved in the recycling businesses will be at this conference. It's a large state conference that I'm going to. So
very good.
If I can find anything on it, I will definitely.
And I'll keep you up to date as I hear more too.
Great. If you do hear of anything, if you don't mind sending me some information on it, but if I find anything, I'll bring it up in my update to you next month.
Okay, because I asked the RCRC lobbyists actually to present on this on behalf of the rural counties.
Perfect.
Okay. Stacy?
Thank you. I just want to add, to put I think maybe a really fine point on a really important part of this is, so between now and February, which is when this board will take action to execute a contract for the solution that is selected, Kyle mentioned needing to go to the jurisdictions, presenting all of the information to the councils and to the board. But as you know, the participating jurisdictions for this contract will be paying for the services or the product of this contract in some way, as well, it depends on what the solution is. But I want to bring that up because the board chose, and I don't say, but because we have the relaxation of the flow control policy that allowed jurisdictions to opt out for the organic material and the recyclables, I think Los Banos was kind of the pioneer there because their hauler could get a better deal than what we were talking about for recyclables at the time. So there's several jurisdictions that have negotiated deals with their own haulers, so they are not participating in the RWA solution for where this material is going. Their material is going somewhere else. That underscores the importance, though, for the jurisdictions that are participating in the RWA solution, as I'm calling it. There's going to be a point where those participating jurisdictions will have to have like a formal letter of commitment or a resolution of commitment before we could really ask this board to execute a contract of whatever it's going to cost, because the cost of these services is going to have to be spread among the participating jurisdiction who's bringing their material to our facility for that purpose. So I hope that makes sense. So I just want to really underscore, we've been talking about it quite a bit, and I know Kyle always does a really good job, but here this fall, while we're preparing to have the local jurisdiction conversations and while we're doing the final negotiations and we have the costs of what our RWA solution is going to be on the end, is that we'll need kind of a two-step approach. I would not have the confidence of asking this board to execute a contract that's costly without a certainty of the participating jurisdictions of what their costs are and an acceptance of that responsibility. So just want to kind of underscore that part sometime between now and February. Did I get any of that wrong, Kyle?
No, our goal is to have something here final, but we will be coming out, as I said, we'll be coming to the city of Merced, the county, Atwater. I believe Livingston is still on that list as possibly participating, coming to each of those jurisdictions to present those contracts so you can see exactly what is going to be proposed, what is either going to be built or set up system that's going to be available, so that the elected officials at each of the jurisdictions are fully aware of what's going on and what some of the possible rates are going to be looking at when it comes back to this board for final decision. When we do come, we will most likely be bringing or asking a resolution to be brought supporting one or the other, whatever the choice is, or at least stating that they understand that they will be participating in this and they will be fully under the flow control that is in place with Merced County.
Yeah, and I think thank you for bringing that up, Stacy, because it is right now, as you look at it, it's the county, Atwater, Livingston, and Merced that the other jurisdictions have already negotiated with their haulers, and those folks are already paying higher rates in form of whatever those haulers are charging them to pick up that service. And I don't think it's fair that you ask those jurisdictions, to spread it equally. It's going to be on the backs of those jurisdictions that are part of it.
Right.
And it's going to be a unique situation, at least on this board, to where you have some folks that are already doing it. It's not going to affect them, but they're going to be making that decision on it. So the more information for April, for the city of Los Banos, city of Gustine that are already have their thing going, the more information for those folks, the better, because ultimately they're going to be asked to make a vote to raise costs on the jurisdictions that are participating in the RWA solution.
Yes, and this is going to be very similar to what we do with recyclables now. There's a processing fee that is back to whoever brings the material to us. That fee is passed through to them. So.
Okay. Anybody else? I want to add to kind of what, and I haven't seen the study that Director McDaniel brought up, but one of the other things too is it's not just the air pollution, it's the amount of impact that it's going to take on the roads. I mean, the more trucks that you have, roads don't last forever. And so they're going to have to be replaced and refinished and all this other stuff. And so it's something that I think that, just from my opinion, I don't think it was I don't think it was planned right. And I'm not saying that it's not your fault. You're just doing your job. So
I didn't write the bill.
Yeah, it's a real garbage bill. Just so if there's no other questions, this is just information only and for discussion. So anybody else?
I did go on the JPA, and yes, the Little Hoover Commission. They're going to be doing the study on it. They are currently doing a study on it. So,
okay.
An ESJPA might be something we want to look at in the future. I know my colleague Pereira has brought that up before too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We have a public comment.
Oh, do we have anybody in the public who wishes to speak?
I just want to ask a question. Last July, we were on vacation in Toronto, and out of the 15 days, we were under quarantine for 10 days because most of us were infected. But at the same time, I was looking at the garbage cans. So they had a garbage can and then another can, I guess, where they put all the organic stuff. So they have 4 cans. One for the greens, another one for the recycles, another one for the garbage, and another one for the organics. 4 cans. Is that the plan here? Because right now I get visited by 3 trucks every week. And if this happens, you're going to have 4 trucks, right? And then that's also another additional charge for the extra can? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I know we don't typically respond, but if I could, and I want to ask Kyle, that is one of the options that the industry, some have chosen, but it's not looking to be the one that we will be using in the region, but it is a jurisdictional decision. Go ahead, Kyle.
It is. There is a ability for jurisdictions to have 4 can services. A lot of it has to do with how that material is being processed or used once it's collected. From the proposals that we've received here in Merced County, both would allow for a 3-can system to be used, which several of the cities and jurisdictions are already doing with their green waste. It would just allow folks to then add food waste to that bin as well. So we wouldn't have to go to a 4-bin system.
Thank you very much. That was a good question. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else from the public? Is there anybody on Zoom? Okay. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a couple of announcements. Also want to echo Director Pereira's gratitude to Marty Yerrick. He's a familiar face, and he has been an excellent friend and former employee who's come back to serve as the interim director for RWA while we go through the recruitment process. So we are so lucky to have Marty helping us out. So thank you. I mentioned, or I gave Meg had the opportunity to introduce herself. I also just want to announce one staff change as well. Adam Perez, who's in the audience, might look familiar to you. He's usually sitting over there by Mary Michael. Yeah. He was our multimedia specialist for several years in the PIO department, and now he is our assistant transit manager for maintenance. So that is for both the bus and YARTS. So his role had, and he's Darren's, is he really? He's Director McDaniel's neighbor. So just want to recognize we've had a lot of staff change and some really excellent acquisitions from other agencies and promotions internally and returns, and it's just a great time at MCAG right now. I also want to just do a quick update. As you know, one of our kind of really popular success stories out of Measure V is our fare subsidy program for seniors, veterans, and ADA accessible passengers. So we have our ridership statistics from last fiscal year. So as you recall, last October, the board authorized expanding the program to all modes, all transit services offered by the bus, not just our fixed route service. So by fixed route, we had for the 12-month period of last year, even with it kind of recovering during the pandemic, we offered 130,000 free rides to those populations on our fixed route system. And then for the 9-month period between October and the end of the fiscal year for paratransit, we had 15,000 passenger rides, and that 15,000, that's paratransit, means that paratransit is essentially free to the user because it is ADA eligible. It's only for ADA certified passengers. So that program has been a success. And then also for our microbus program, we had 10,000 rides under our Measure V program. So that's about 155 free rides, and that's not even for a full service year for the expanded services into paratransit and the microbus. So still a very popular program, and all of that expansion of the program we were still able to achieve within the board established subsidy cap of $320,000 a year. So we're still able to expand and capture all of that in our existing allocation from the Measure V transit funds. And just really quickly want to give a highlight for what's coming. You know, we're going to have a busy fall. Sometimes I get asked, are we going to have a December meeting? And yes, we're going to have a December meeting unless the chairman tells me otherwise, because we do have activity that we need to take care of, namely our REAP 2 application that will be due later that month. But starting in October, we're working with Dan Levitt and hoping that at the October board meeting, we can get something scheduled, if not shortly thereafter, to start the, to give a passenger rail update to the board. That has been some time since we've had that discussion, but also to start talking about, kind of, I think the broader strategy around the 99. We have our 99 subcommittee that we haven't engaged yet. Some of the multimodal conversations happening there, the operations and maintenance costs for the passenger rail projects coming into the area. So just really getting into that conversation, starting with a presentation with Dan Levitt, hopefully in October. We also really need to start getting into the weeds around the REAP program. And when you hear REAP, you should hear housing. I know it's a really weird acronym, but REAP is our housing funds. We are well underway on a number of projects and studies that the board has authorized for the REAP 1 funds that will be timely. Meg can come and give a good update on what we're doing with those and what those studies are looking like. But then also engaging with the consultant that you authorized today about how do we want to use the $3.9 million of the next tranche of funding that's coming. And then, of course, just the broader discussion around regional housing planning. And that's really going to be a whole new thread of discussion at the board level that we'll need to kick off here in the fall. And then lastly, just a heads up, and I'm really looking to Nav because he and I haven't even talked much about this. We're coming up on the 1-year mark of when we did our implementation plan update for Measure V. And at that time, the board had asked to have a check-in 1 year later, which is around now, on how are the projects progressing, what does the revenue look like. Nav and I and Ty and some of our staff have had one-on-ones with a lot of the jurisdictions to check in on your regional projects and what's the progress, and does it look like we need to move money up or back. And so we will prepare an update on the implementation plan, as well as start to invite some of the large regional projects from the jurisdiction staff to come and start, kind of sharing with the board how those projects are shaping up. And I'd like to lead with and work with the invitation for the city of Los Banos. We do have our Pioneer project, the Pioneer policy that the board adopted I think 2 or 3 years ago at this point. I get a lot of questions about the Pioneer project, so I thought, we can work with the city staff to come and talk to the board about here's what the project is looking like, here's the progress it's making, all of that being very relevant leading into the next implementation plan update next calendar year, 2023. So that's kind of the highlight of what I see are being the big ticket items coming into the fall. Just a few. It's a busy fall. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody from the public? All right, we will move on to director's reports, and we'll start with Director Pereira. Thank you. Director McDaniel? Espinoza?
I always.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm only going to take a few minutes here. I just want to highlight as I do look through the informational items on there, and this is for RWA, is just, when you look at the studies and it says we have 16.8 years worth of life left at the landfill at Billy Wright, and it says that you have 28.2 years left of life at the Billy Wright landfill. That's not a lot of time. So I know as we bring in outside garbage in order to be able to meet bond needs, want to continue to look at those things and find out in a place when we feel comfortable financially that we don't need that additional revenue to make bond payments, that we kind of slow down on filling up our landfills with other people's garbage. So I just want to highlight that I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. Just, 16.8 years, it'll fly by. And I know, when we looked at earlier on, trying to maybe look at some property and discuss the word eminent domain and has to be within so many years of needing it. I think as fast as everything seems to be moving, we're going to end up in one of those positions, and I want this board and staff to just kind of keep that on the radar, that we need to be looking at those options on how are we going to remain, to have a place to send our garbage into the future here, and really not doing it with, on the backs of with everybody else, our citizens doing it on the backs of everybody else's garbage. So just want to highlight that. Thank you.
You have a big backyard. I'm just kidding.
Not that big.
Director Hoag?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Kale?
I'm good. Nothing to report?
I just wanted to say, I told Stacy this earlier. I went through and I was reading the response to comments from the Caltrans document and stuff. The amount of input that you guys took in doing that, and the amount of time that must have taken is really impressive. And so I really appreciate staff and their efforts and the time that they put into it, because it can't be easy. It certainly can't be a lot of fun. But I know I appreciate it, and I think the board appreciates it as well. And so with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Have a good day.